let me tell you about the last time I trusted my parents with anything that truly mattered. Actually, let me go even further back than that. Because this story does not begin with a cake or a banner or a betrayal dressed up in pink frosting and gold piping. This story begins with a lifetime of being overlooked, and it ends with me finally deciding that being overlooked was no longer something I was willing to accept. My name is Laura. I have a daughter named Mia, a husband named Marcus, and until very recently I had parents I kept making excuses for. I am done making excuses now. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late spring when my mother called. I remember it clearly because I was standing in the parking lot of a grocery store, loading bags into the trunk of my car. The sun was out, but the air had that particular feeling, the kind that makes you sense something is about to shift, though you cannot yet tell whether the shift will be for better or for worse. My mother's voice was light, casual, the kind of tone she uses when she wants to say something significant but does not want you to brace yourself before she gets there. I have known that voice my entire life. It is the voice that comes before both good news and catastrophic news, and for decades I have never been able to tell the difference between the two until it was already too late, she said. We were thinking of throwing a graduation party for our granddaughter, just something small, family only. We would love to host. I nearly dropped the bag of rice I was holding. I said thank you. She sounded sincere, genuinely, warmly sincere. The kind of sincere that makes your shoulders drop just a little. The kind that makes you believe, against every better instinct you have developed over a lifetime, that maybe this time will be different. I did not think twice about who she meant. My daughter Mia had just graduated high school. Not just graduated. She had graduated as valedictorian. After 4 years of sleepless nights, impossible group projects with classmates who contributed absolutely nothing, and pushing through personal challenges that no teenager should ever have to face alone, she had made it to the very top of her class. She was 18 years old, and she had earned every single thing she had achieved. And now, I thought, her grandparents finally saw her the way I did. I told Mia about it that night. She was sitting at her desk, hair still damp from the shower, and when I told her, her eyes lit up in a way I had not seen in a long time. It was not excitement exactly. It was something quieter and more fragile than excitement. It was hope. The careful, tentative kind that people carry when they have been disappointed before but have not yet given up entirely, she said. Grandma and Grandpa? I said yes. She blinked. Really? I nodded. She did not say anything else after that, but I could see it in her face. That small, careful flicker of finally. After years of showing up to every family dinner, being polite, being helpful, laughing at grandfather's terrible jokes, teaching her grandparents how to use the television remote and how to send an email and how to save a contact in their phones. After all of that quiet effort and patient love, someone had noticed her. Someone was going to celebrate her. If I could travel back in time to that moment, I would sit down beside both of us and say, please do not get your hopes up. I am so sorry, but please do not get your hopes up. The day of the party was hot. Not a pleasant summer hot, but the thick, humid kind that clings to the back of your knees and makes you feel irritable before anything has even gone wrong. Marcus spent 20 minutes looking for his good shoes. Mia changed her earrings 3 times. I was already sweating before we even got in the car. We drove mostly in silence, and the closer we got to my parents' neighborhood, the quieter all 3 of us became. I remember telling them, right before we turned onto the street, remember, this is a kind thing they are doing. Let's just smile and say thank you. I said that with complete sincerity. Looking back on it now, I cannot believe how thoroughly I had deceived myself. We turned the corner and I almost drove past the house entirely. At first glance, it did not look like a family gathering. It looked like a small outdoor wedding. A white canopy tent had been set up in the front yard. Dozens of folding chairs were arranged in careful rows. Gold tablecloths caught the afternoon light. Streamers hung in coordinated loops. Personalized decorative signs had been staked into the lawn at measured intervals. Balloon arrangements in matching colors flanked the entrance to the tent on both sides. Marcus said quietly, "They really went all out." Mia leaned forward from the back seat. "Wow!" We parked and walked across the lawn, and immediately we were absorbed into a crowd of people. Hugs from relatives I barely recognized. Air kisses. Plastic cups of lemonade pressed into our hands before we could even look around and get our bearings. People I had not seen since childhood. Family friends. Cousins from 3 different branches of the family. My uncle's ex-wife, whose presence I found genuinely confusing because I had no memory of them ever having reconciled. And then I saw her, a girl standing at the absolute center of everything. Curls freshly done, a glittery dress that caught the sun at every angle, a sash draped neatly across her chest. She was practically glowing with the particular energy of a child who has been told all morning that today is entirely and completely about her. I saw her and I genuinely still did not understand what I was looking at. I smiled at her. I waved. I assumed she was simply excited because her cousin Mia was the one being celebrated today. And then I saw the cake, 3 tiers, pastel pink frosting, gold piping along every edge, a small edible graduation cap placed carefully on the very top, and written across the front in deliberate, practiced cursive, "Congratulations to our only granddaughter." Class of 2025, I stopped completely. I read it again, slowly, convinced I had misread it the first time. There are 2 granddaughters in this family. There is Mia, and there is Kay, my sister Heather's daughter. 2 girls, 2 granddaughters. The word only made no sense at all in this context. I stood there rereading that single word while the party moved and laughed and chattered all around me. Then I saw the banner stretched across the back of the tent. The colors of a middle school. The logo of a middle school. And beside the cake table, a framed photograph I had somehow not noticed before. Kay in a white dress and a tiara, holding a rolled certificate, looking exactly like someone had staged a beauty pageant for graduating the 8th grade. It hit me all at once. The way you feel when you walk into a glass door you simply did not see coming. This party was not for Mia. It had never been for Mia. When my mother said our granddaughter, she had meant Kay. She had always meant Kay. And I, in my desperate and embarrassing desire to believe in something good, had never once thought to ask which granddaughter she was talking about. I turned slowly and looked at Mia. She was not crying. She was not panicking. She was simply still. Standing just behind me with her hands at her sides, watching the scene in front of her with an expression I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not devastation. Not anger. Just a quiet, practiced recognition. The look of someone who had always known something like this was possible, who had quietly prepared for it, and who was now simply confirming what she had always, somewhere deep down, suspected. Marcus looked at me. I looked back at him. Neither of us spoke. We moved through the rest of the party the way ghosts move through a house. We smiled when people talked to us. We made appropriate sounds at appropriate moments. A few guests gave us puzzled looks when they noticed that Mia was not wearing a sash. A few produced those careful, polite smiles people offer when they are not entirely sure who has made the mistake, but feel obligated to behave as though everything is perfectly fine regardless. Then came the gift table, box after wrapped box. Envelopes. Handmade cards. A personalized tumbler with Kay's name printed on it in cheerful block letters. Guests approached in a steady stream to add their offerings to the growing pile. We had brought absolutely nothing. Why would we have? We had believed with complete sincerity that this was Mia's party. We had expected to be the guests of honor, not the guests who arrived empty-handed and spent an afternoon slowly realizing they were attending someone else's celebration entirely. A woman I barely recognized gave me a long, puzzled look when she noticed I was holding nothing. Another leaned toward the person beside her and whispered something while glancing sideways at Mia. One cousin actually tilted her head and mouthed the words, "Where is the gift?" at me across the table. I wanted to dissolve directly into the lawn and disappear without a trace. Then my sister Heather stood up with a champagne flute in her hand and delivered a toast. She spoke about hard work and grace and beauty and intelligence. She spoke with enormous warmth about what a significant milestone middle school represented and how proud the entire family was to be there. She spoke with the full, unguarded enthusiasm of someone whose child is being adored by 2 devoted, attentive grandparents who remember every grade and show up for every recital and keep framed photographs on the mantel in the front room. Applause. Laughter. The sound of glasses touching. Mia stood there and watched it all without moving a single muscle. When the crowd thinned slightly around the cake table, I found my mother near the cooler, scooping ice into cups with the cheerful, distracted efficiency of a woman who has absolutely no idea what she has done. I walked over to her and said, as calmly and quietly as I could manage, "The cake says only granddaughter." She smiled without looking up. "Oh, that was probably just a mistake at the bakery." I did not move. She shrugged lightly. "Besides, Mia is older now. She's practically an adult. This was more of a real milestone." I stood there and stared at her. She went back to the ice. Then my father walked over with a paper plate and said with genuine, uncomplicated curiosity, the kind of curiosity a person has about something mildly interesting they have just been reminded of, "Wait, did Mia graduate too?" "From high school," I said. He blinked. "From what?" "High school," I said again. He laughed. A short, easy, unbothered laugh. "Oh, right, of course." Then he turned to get a drink, as casually as if he had just been reminded of a minor fact about a distant acquaintance. My mother said nothing. She smiled and turned back toward the buffet table we left. No one followed us to the car. No one called after us. No one appeared to notice that we were gone at all. And somehow, in a day already full of things that hurt deeply, that was the part that hurt the most. We drove away in silence, all three of us, and as I pulled slowly out of the driveway, I said only, "We are not doing this again." Mia looked out the window without replying. There are things I did not understand when I was a child. And there are things I understood but taught myself to dismiss, because acknowledging them would have required me to accept something I was not prepared to face. That is what growing up in a family like mine teaches you. It teaches you how to doubt your own perception before anyone else gets the chance to challenge it. It teaches you how to gaslight yourself so efficiently that the people who benefit from your silence never even have to ask. I was the middle child. My older brother was the intellectual one, praised endlessly for his arguments and his academic achievements. My younger sister Heather was the sparkle, loud and magnetic and charming in a way that filled every room she walked into. I was simply there. Middle of the birth order, middle of every conversation when I was fortunate enough to appear in one at all. My parents did not dislike me. That would have been simpler in a strange way. What they did was something more ordinary and in some ways more damaging. They simply did not notice me. I was the easy child. I did not cry at bedtime. I organized my own lunchbox from an early age. I said thank you too often and asked for too little, and the result was that my parents treated me the way people treat a piece of furniture they are fond of but never think to maintain. I have a specific memory of sitting at the family dinner table, 10 or 11 years old, while my mother told a story about my brother's spelling bee trophy and my sister's role in the school play. I was sitting right there at that table. I had been present at both of those events. I had watched them unfold in real time. But in my mother's retelling, I did not exist within those stories. I was a background element like the wallpaper or the curtains. Present but irrelevant. I did not understand then how deeply strange that was. I understand it now. The house where the party took place, the house my parents have lived in for decades, originally belonged to my grandmother. When she passed away, she left it in equal shares to my mother, my brother, and to me. I was 4 years old at the time. Heather had not yet been born. The deed listed 3 names. Mine was one of them. The first time my mother mentioned it, years later, she waved it away before I could even register what she was saying. "You are technically a co-owner," she told me, in the tone someone uses to describe an administrative quirk too minor to bother with. "Just ignore that. It is not a real thing." So I did what I had been trained to do my entire life. I smoothed it over, moved on, and did not mention it again. When Mia was born, I expected something to change in my parents. I had this quiet hope that the arrival of a grandchild might finally unlock something warm and expansive in them that had always been there, but had simply never had the right occasion to emerge. I imagined my mother leaning over the hospital bed and saying, softly, that I had been exactly like this once. I imagined my father weeping in the corner, overwhelmed by the feeling of continuation and love. They said Mia was cute. They brought a bib. Then they asked how many weeks of maternity leave I had remaining. That should have told me everything. But you do not want to see these things clearly when your child is the one involved. You want to believe that people are capable of surprising you, that love can arrive belatedly, that families have the capacity to deepen over time even when all the evidence suggests otherwise. 4 years later, when Heather had Kay, there were balloons on the hospital room door. My mother had knitted a sweater by hand in soft yellow yarn. My father had purchased a silver rattle with the baby's initials engraved on it. He learned how to use a photo printer specifically so he could print her pictures. My mother joined a Facebook group for grandparents. They suddenly had time they had not previously had. They suddenly had strong opinions. They suddenly had an identity they wore proudly. Grandparents, with a capital G for Mia, they had been polite, somewhat distracted adults who shared a dinner table with us twice a month, We went to every single one of those dinners anyway. We smiled. We brought food. We listened to detailed updates about Kay's piano lessons, Kay's loose teeth, Kay's crayon drawing that supposedly depicted a dolphin, but appeared by any objective standard to be a purple triangle with ambitions above its station. Mia complimented every drawing. She helped set the table and cleared the plates afterward. She showed her grandparents how to operate the television remote, how to compose an email, how to save a contact properly in their phones. She typed everything in slowly and gently, with the patient care of someone who believes that good behavior might eventually be rewarded. Not with money, not with presents, just with recognition, just with the ordinary, unremarkable gift of being loved. Her other grandparents, Marcus's parents, lived in Europe. Mia saw them perhaps once a year if circumstances allowed. So for her, my parents were not supplementary grandparents she could take or leave. They were her grandparents. The nearby ones, the available ones, the ones who were supposed to show up. She wanted what other children had without thinking about it. People who told embarrassing stories from when she was small and pinched her cheeks and mailed her ridiculous postcards from their holidays. She wanted to matter to them in a way that required no effort on her part, the way you matter to people who simply love you. She tried her absolute best to earn it, and it never worked. In her senior year, she became something genuinely extraordinary. Valedictorian, debate team champion, hundreds of volunteer hours, academic distinction across every subject she touched. I could see in her, as the year went on, a carefully contained and growing hope that the achievement might finally tip something. She would mention almost casually that her grandfather had always liked history, and she had just received full marks on her history project. She would wonder out loud whether her grandmother had happened to see the photo I had posted after the debate tournament. She was not asking for a parade or a standing ovation. She was asking for a nod, a single, simple acknowledgement that she existed in their world as something more than a convenient and forgettable presence. I sent my parents the graduation details twice. I called ahead and confirmed the date and the time and the location. 3 days before the ceremony, I received a text from my mother. Sorry, not feeling well. Might sit this one out. Sit this one out as though it were an optional neighborhood barbecue, as though it were not the single most significant academic achievement of Mia's life to date, as though 18 years of showing up deserved at least one afternoon in return. When I told Mia, she did not cry. She tied her shoes and asked me calmly whether her graduation speech sounded okay. That was the worst part. Not the hurt, the normalcy of it. So when my mother called and said she wanted to throw a graduation party for our granddaughter, I did not hesitate. I did not ask for clarification. I did not pause to consider whether she might mean someone other than Mia. Of course I thought she meant Mia. Who else could she possibly mean? She said our granddaughter, and for one unguarded moment I let myself believe she meant us. I told Mia. I watched that quiet flicker of hope cross her face. She picked out a dress. She offered to invite one of her favorite teachers to say a few words. She was nervous and excited and hopeful in the specific, fragile way that young people are when they still believe things can be different. And so was IWE were both completely wrong. I am not, by nature, a confrontational person. I was raised to absorb things quietly, to be the easy one, to smooth over whatever needed smoothing and move forward without making demands or drawing attention to the damage. But something happened at that party. Something that had been slowly bending under too much weight for too many years finally gave way, not with noise or spectacle. Just cleanly, the way certain things break when they have been under pressure for longer than they were ever designed to withstand. 3 days after the party, Marcus and I sat at the kitchen table and talked. Not about feelings or history or the accumulated weight of 2 decades of small erasures. We talked practically, quietly, about what we were going to do next. Marcus drafted the letter. I have always been grateful that it was him and not me, because I think if I had written it myself, I would have put too much of myself into it. I would have explained and justified and bled onto the page in ways that would have given them something to argue against. Marcus wrote it the way a surgeon operates. Precise, clean, and without hesitation. The letter stated simply that I intended to sell my 1/3 share of the property. That was the entirety of it. No explanation of the party. No recounting of years of being overlooked. No emotional appeal to anything. Just the legal fact of what I was going to do, stated plainly and without ornamentation. I signed it without hesitating. I did not mail it. I drove across town and delivered it by hand, folded once inside a plain white envelope with no return address. I placed it in their mailbox and drove away without knocking on the door. 3 hours later, the phone started ringing. Heather called first, crying so hard I initially thought something medically serious had occurred. She told me our mother had nearly dropped her tea. She said our mother was shaking. She said I was trying to make them homeless. I told Heather, as calmly as I could, that our parents were perfectly welcome to buy out my share. They could take a mortgage. They could consult a financial advisor. They could call Heather herself for assistance if they needed it. I had no interest in removing the roof from over their heads. My interest was in removing my name from a deed that had become, over time, a symbol of everything I had been expected to accept in silence. My mother called a few hours later. Her opening line was remarkable in its confidence. She said, "I am going to pretend I misread that letter, and you are going to tell me it was a mistake." I let the silence stretch between us for several seconds. Then I said, "It was not." She pulled in a sharp breath. The confirmation, it seemed, was somehow worse than the letter itself had been. She called what I was doing vindictive. She said I was acting out of spite over a party. She said I was putting her and my father at risk of losing their home because of what she referred to as a stupid party. I told her I was doing it because my daughter's future should not be financially tethered to a house filled with framed photographs of someone else's child. She laughed, sharp, humorless, and quick. Then she told me I should be very careful about burning bridges. I told her I was fairly certain she had already handled that herself, with a cake and a banner and very careful cursive. Then I hung up. I expected the guilt trips. I had lived my entire childhood with these people, and I understood their methods well. I expected cold silences and pointed comments relayed through relatives. I expected my mother to stop eating for a few days and ensure I heard about it. I expected the kind of slow, accumulated pressure that works by wearing you down over time rather than confronting you directly. I did not expect what came next. 2 weeks after the letter, Mia came home from dance class with her face arranged in that specific way of hers that looks completely normal unless you know her. Shoulders straight, voice level, eyes doing the quiet, careful work of processing something she is not yet ready to say aloud. She told me what had happened. They had been waiting for her outside the dance studio. My parents, standing on the sidewalk, waving as she came out, acting as though they had simply happened to be out walking in that part of the city at that particular time. They had never once shown any interest in her dance classes, her rehearsal schedule, or the location of the studio she attended. But on that Tuesday afternoon, there they were. They were friendly at first, Mia told me, warmer than she had ever experienced them being. She described the feeling of it as uncomfortable in a way she could not quite name, like watching actors perform a version of warmth rather than actually feeling it. Then they got to the point. They told her she was the only one her mother ever listened to. They told her I was making them homeless. They asked her, with the particular weaponized tenderness that certain adults use when they want children to carry burdens that belong to the adults themselves, to please just talk to me. Please just make this stop. Mia told them no. No explanation accompanying it, no apology softening it, no invitation for further conversation. Just no. My mother looked her directly in the eyes and said, "Fine, but choices have consequences." Mia turned and walked away. I stood at the kitchen window for a long time after she told me all of this, because I had expected them to come after me. I had mentally prepared for that possibility. What I had not prepared for, what I had genuinely not believed them capable of, was using Mia as a tool, ambushing her outside her dance studio, placing the emotional and practical weight of their housing situation onto the shoulders of a teenager who had spent the better part of her life simply trying to be loved by them. I had not seen the worst of it yet. 3 weeks passed. The immediate shock of everything had begun to settle. Mia and I had started talking about dorm furniture and meal plans and the good kind of stress that comes attached to something new and hopeful. And then the envelope arrived, university letterhead. Mia thought it was her housing packet and opened it at the kitchen counter while I rinsed a bowl in the sink. I heard her breath catch. Just one short, soft sound. She held the letter out to me without saying a word. It was a notice from the admissions office. Her enrollment was under review. An anonymous report had been submitted raising concerns about omissions in her application, inconsistencies in her submitted materials, and undisclosed legal entanglements. The language was so precisely bureaucratic and detached that it took me a full moment to absorb what I was actually reading. Mia stood completely still at the counter. Marcus took the letter from my hands, read it through twice, and then looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face in all our years together. I sat down hard. Someone had contacted Mia's university anonymously and filed a report designed to threaten her enrollment. Someone who knew enough about the property situation to use the specific phrase undisclosed legal entanglements. Someone who wanted her to pay for a decision I had made. Someone who looked at an 18-year-old girl who had earned everything she had and decided that destroying her future was an acceptable form of retaliation. I got in the car without telling Marcus I was leaving. I drove across town in a state of absolute, cold clarity. Not rage exactly, though it was very close to that. Something more focused and more certain than rage. My father opened the door before I even knocked, which told me without any ambiguity that they had been expecting me. My mother appeared behind him in the hallway. She did not look guilty or surprised or remorseful. She looked settled, the way people look when they have made a decision and moved past the point of needing to defend it. I asked them directly whether they had reported Mia to the university. My mother did not deny it. She said, "You think you can do what you did and face no consequences?" I stepped inside. I told her she had tried to destroy Mia's future. She said the school had not been meant for Mia. She said I had dragged my personal drama into things and should not be surprised by what followed. She said Mia was a part of this now, and parts have consequences too. Something inside me broke then. Not loudly, not dramatically, cleanly the way bone separates from bone when pulled with enough quiet, steady force. "You are not just bad grandparents," I said. "You are dangerous people." Then I turned and walked out. They did not see me reach into my coat pocket and press record on my phone before I rang the doorbell. That evening, I posted 3 things to the family group chat. A photograph of the cake with its careful cursive reading congratulations to our only granddaughter. A screenshot of the university letter with its cold bureaucratic language about legal entanglements and inconsistencies. And an audio clip of my mother's voice, steady and clear, stating that the school had not been meant for Mia. Then I turned my phone over on the counter and made dinner. Within the hour, the group chat had become something I can only describe as a fire that had been waiting for oxygen. Cousins who had been silent for years sent messages asking whether what they were seeing was real. An aunt texted me privately to say she had had absolutely no idea and was deeply sorry. 3 people left the group without commenting. Heather posted something about the situation being blown out of proportion, and no one responded to her. Not a single person. Not even Kay. Mia read through every message methodically, calmly, one after another, with the focused attention of someone collecting evidence for something more significant than revenge. When she reached the end, she looked at me and said, "I do not think I ever want to see them again." She said it the way she might mention that she had decided not to return to a restaurant where the service had been poor. Measured. Clear. Absolute. Then she went back to her room, and I went back to the kitchen, and neither of us felt the need to say anything more. A few days later, my brother called. We had not spoken since before the party. His voice had that careful quality it gets when he has already decided something and is simply choosing the right words to communicate it. He told me my parents had called him asking for help buying out my share. He said they had told him they were desperate. Then he said he had told them no, and that he intended to sell his third as well. I felt something release in my chest that I had not fully realized I was holding. He said simply, "For Mia, this crossed a line." That was the whole conversation. Short and clear and final, the way things are when someone has made up their mind completely and does not require anyone else to validate the decision. The house sold several months later. A fair price. Clean transaction. My third of the proceeds covered everything Mia needed. Tuition. Student housing. The bills no one thinks to warn you about when a child leaves home for the first time. And there was money remaining after all of that. More than I had dared to hope for. We have not spoken to my parents since the day I walked out of their house. No calls, no letters, no chance encounters arranged through mutual relatives. Nothing. My brother signed his paperwork and stepped back from the entire situation with the same quiet efficiency he has always brought to the things he decides are finished. Heather, from what I have heard, eventually stopped defending what my parents had attempted to do to Mia. She told them she needed space. She got it. My parents used their portion of the sale to purchase a small house in a neighborhood far from town. A cash purchase because they could not qualify for a mortgage. Old house, difficult street, bad neighbors, no mortgage. They own every cracked tile and leaking pipe of it outright. It is entirely theirs now. Mia is at university. She is focused and sharp and building the life she earned entirely on her own, without a single drop of credit owed to the people who spent 18 years looking through her as though she were made of glass. She does not mention them anymore. Not with anger, not with grief, not with that fragile and careful hope she used to carry so quietly. She has simply removed them from her story. One evening, some months after everything had settled, the two of us were sitting on the back porch as the sun dropped low enough to turn the light golden and forgiving. She was stirring her tea with a spoon she had accidentally bent months ago and never thought to replace. She asked me, in that same calm and thoughtful voice she uses for everything now, whether I thought they would ever truly understand what they had done. I thought about it honestly for a moment before I answered. No, I said. But that is not the point. She looked at me. Then what is? We do not owe them our understanding, I said. We just owe ourselves our boundaries. She nodded once. We sat there together as the light kept going softer and the evening settled around us, and for the first time in a very long time, there was nothing left unfinished between us at all.